Suppose you walk into somebody's house and you knock on the door and there's no one home, and you kind of open the door and peek in and you notice there's a stack of plates sitting on the counter, and they're just covered with dirty food and old bread and dead bananas. They're just stacked there. Now, you ask yourself, wow, I wonder if someone's recently been home. How would you know? The only thing you would absolutely know for sure is not when they left or how long ago they had been home, but which dirty plate had been stacked first. That would be the one at the bottom. Which one had been stacked next, that'd be the next one up, and eventually which one was stacked last, the one on the top. You see, the stack of plates and what's on the plates and what's in the plates, they don't tell you how long ago they got there. They only tell you the order in which they were placed there. Exactly the same principle is true with the geological layers of the earth. We see all of these rock layers way deep down in the Grand Canyon, all the way in sequence 6,000 feet up to the top, and we see very flat layers. Now, these layers extend for thousands and thousands of miles. The same layer of rock that starts in Texas, it extends all the way to Colorado. You'd have to drive for 10 hours to get there and go to sleep, get a nap in a hotel, wake up, get in your car, drive 10 more hours all the way to Canada. It's the same rock layer you're riding your car on. It's flat, extending across entire continents. There's no place on Earth where we see rock layers forming like that. Now, the world over 100 years ago, starting in the early 1800s, decided to assume the rock layers were laid down slowly and gradually the same way we see them being laid down today. No one was there to see it happen. It's just assumed to have happened slowly. The Bible gives us a very different explanation, that there was a world-covering flood with the entire continents being swept with waves filled with sediment, when the whole globe was covered by water, which means these layers would have formed very rapidly and recently. The order is because of the way things happened during the flood, not because of huge periods of time. Now, how do we know? One of the ways that God has revealed the truth to us was at the end of the flood, the continents were moving, but not slow like today, but very rapidly. The water built up for 5 months, 150 days, and then over the next 7 months, it started to lower and go down, sweeping things off of the continent, forming continental shelves, carving out valleys and huge flat areas on the surface of continents. But as those mountains were rising up, those sediment layers that had formed during the first 5 months were still soft. So as they rose, we see folded layers, curved folded layers of sediment, one after another after another. Now, if these plates, one was formed as a sediment layer, and millions of years later, another one formed, and 5 million years later, another one formed, and 10 million years later, another one formed, and they represent hundreds of millions of years of Earth history, those layers would have hardened in between. It's like, if this is a sediment layer and it was laid down and then millions of years passed and another layer laid down, they're as hard as these plates. Now, when the mountains are lifted up, those plates aren't going to bend and fold into curved, uniform curves. I can shove on these plates as hard as I want. I can soak them in water for 100 years. If I hit them too hard, they break, they fracture, they crack. They don't bend. You see, it's the very nature of folded sediments that are cracked and not cracked and bent, but folded, that show us the rock layers formed while they were still soft. So finding a bunch of layers is like finding a bunch of plates. It doesn't tell you when they were put down, only the order they were put down. But the fact they're bent and folded in the mountains of the earth show that they were formed recently and rapidly while they were still soft.